You know the names, you've seen the plays, but what about the stories behind the game? Welcome to Honorable Mentions with Tanner Morgan and Quinn Carroll, two teammates turned storytellers, breaking down life, film, and everything in between. From locker room laughs to real world lessons, nothing's off the record here. This is Honorable Mentions.
Morgan to throw, has time, lost one near side for Tyler Johnson. He has the catch at the 10, down the sideline, touchdown! What a play! He's got all the double, the one at the 10, turns it up 5, touchdown! Minnesota Golden Gophers!
Hey, welcome to the Honorable Mentions podcast, brought to you by Tanner Morgan and Quinn Carroll. This is our first episode. We've done a pilot, but we're excited to get into all things college football, life, a little bit of Gopher sports. We are consistently good, maybe not ever elite. I'm elite in other areas, but maybe not always elite on the field. So maybe you feel like you're an honorable mention, but you're part of our community. Quinn, tell us a little bit about yourself and how this even got started with the HM pod.
Yeah, dude. So just a few weeks ago, I was sitting down with my dad and my brother, and they were like, why don't you start a podcast? Who better to start a podcast with than my honorable mention bro, Tanner Morgan? So we're brainstorming names. We're trying to figure out what we're going to call it, because you got to start with a strong name. And my brother and I came up with honorable mentions, because between the two of us, we have 4 or 5 honorable mention awards that we have obviously hung up in our bedroom that everybody gets to look at and everybody loves to show off. Not quite first, second, or third team. You've got a second team, don't you, Tanner? You have a second team, all Big Ten.
Yeah, one second team. That's because I just had a great O-line and very elite receivers.
Well, and you were an elite quarterback. But anyway, so that's how it started. And then from there, just shot you a text and said, let's do this thing. And you were all in from the beginning. So thank God for that. But it's been fun, man. Just trying to figure out social media, how we're going to produce this thing, what sort of microphone to get, and really what we were going to discuss on the pod. Because we have a unique perspective as former players, former Gophers, Minnesota guys. I know you're not from Minnesota, but you're here. You played
feel like
here. You live here with your family and
That's
beautiful
right.
family. So it's been great. I'm so fired up to be here. Fired up for the first episode. We got an elite guest.
That's right.
You know, we're honorable mentions, but we're consistently good. This guy is elite. Yeah. So can't wait to share that.
Let's talk about him
guys.
coming back a little bit, right? So so we have our guest. Episode 1 is the one and only Drake Lindsey, going into his 3rd year now as a Gophers quarterback. Looking forward to next season. You know, he kind of highlighted a little bit about what his pitch to a portal receiver would be, which I thought was phenomenal, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I want to see. Like, I want to see some elite receivers, some great talent come and play with Drake outside. We've had a couple guys leave and enter the portal. You know, most recently Malachi Coleman. You know, who knows all that happened there, but I want to see like some guys in the portal come and play with him. But he did a phenomenal job on the interview. We'll have him back on as we go, but I think it's just really cool to hear his perspective and get kind of a look at what his favorite moment was of the season, the toughest defense he went against, some learning opportunities. He was very open with us about those things. And we get his honor roll, which I think you guys are really, really going to enjoy. But Quinn, let's talk about that. Maybe Drake a little bit, but you know, forecasting the 2026 Guaranteed Rate Bowl in Phoenix, Arizona. What are you looking for? And can Coach Fleck and company keep the undefeated record in bowl games?
Yeah, I believe this is going for 7-0 in bowl games, 8-0 in bowl games,
7-0, and yeah,
7-0 in bowl games. So, I mean, that's nothing to sneeze at, right? You get an opportunity to go play an extra game. Obviously, my former alma mater decided to not take that bid this year, but bowl games are important. They're fun. They're good for development of younger guys. And guys like Tony Nelson, who was able to get a start against the Badgers this year at right guard, waited basically 10, 11 weeks to get his opportunity on the field, and he took advantage of it. And here comes another opportunity for a guy like Tony Nelson for the continuity of that O-line going into 26. So that's what I'm looking forward to seeing, is how this O-line continues to mesh throughout bowl prep. Bowl prep's a long experience. This is an earlier bowl game, so they only have a couple weeks of preparation together, but those 2 weeks are crucial, not just for the performance on December 26th, but for the performance of the 12 regular season games in 2026. So talk a little bit about yourself, Tanner, how excited you are for the pod and what you're looking forward to in this bowl game here.
Yeah, dude. So I'm excited to just, bring a highlight into college football, Gopher sports in general. I'm a Gopher. I love everybody associated with it, but I love college football. I'm a college football guy, and that's really what this pod is going to be centered around. I got an opportunity to do some broadcasting stuff this fall, and I loved it. And so when you came up with this idea, I was like, man, I'm in. The name is great. Like, let's do it. And it's a unique way to stay engaged in college football and bring you guys a little bit of insight. And a quarterback O-line perspective, I think, is one of the most beautiful relationships in sports. And so how can two guys bring a highlight into that, for fans, and hopefully, we're going to continue to have some great guests on. When we dropped our first reel, John Michael Schmitz was a guy who was like, I want to be on. So we'll have him on at some point. Maybe when the season's over, maybe during an off week on a Monday or something. But, again, I played at quarterback at the University of Minnesota 6 years. Shout out COVID. Let's go. Started for 4.5, and then kind of coached a little bit. Now, I do ministry broadcasting and own a private quarterback coaching company called QB Motion, which we love. Stay involved in football that way, getting these guys going. Quinn's involved in training with line of scrimmage and brute. But man, I'm just excited to talk it up, and I love ball, and being able to bring insight to people who love football as well with you is going to be really fun. So I want to highlight one more thing before we get into Notre Dame. There's a reason Coach Fleck is 6-0 in bowl games. I think part of it is his preparation and how the staff approaches it. I don't think they do it like most other staffs in the country, right? He says it's a celebration of the season. In an era where bowl games are maybe becoming less important, which we'll talk about with Notre Dame, I love the way that he's still approaching it. Now, highlight into what a coach's life is like right now. In December, these coaches are actively trying to figure out roster retention. What guys do I have that are going to enter the portal, which opens on January 2nd? There's only one window this year, January 2nd to January 16th. That's it. So you have to hit on your portal class, and you have to make sure you have the numbers that you're bringing in from high school and portal, or else you're going to have an issue come spring ball, right? There is no spring portal window anymore, right? So you have to be locked in there. I'm correct in that, right? There is no spring portal. This season is the first one, right?
Correct. Last spring was the last portal spring.
Gotcha. So that's the reality, is these coaches are busting their butts recruiting, right? Like, they're on the road recruiting, figuring out, okay, is there anybody else we can sign in February that hasn't signed yet? Okay. And then from a front office coaching perspective, what guys could enter the portal from different schools? Can we watch the tape on them so we can create a list? That way, when these guys do enter the portal, right, because it's illegal to reach out to them before. Some guys reach out through backdoor agents and other things that's happening, right? But what guys can I reach out to when January 2nd opens and the portal is flooded with entries? Who do I want to reach out to? Who do I want to get? So I'm making my list. Whereas from a recruiting standpoint, if you're recruiting high school players, you have, a couple years to do this and make your list, figure out who you want to attack. Right now, it's quick. And I think Coach Fleck has been on record calling it's like speed dating, which I think is a beautiful way to illustrate it. One of the reasons that Coach Fleck is so good at recruiting, I think, is his just rich in relationships, but also I think you see that across the landscape of college football coaches. But from a bowl game perspective, you see why some of these teams don't want to play, because, man, from a coaching perspective, it's locked in. Mario Cristobal, on his press conference, he said, it's easy for coaches to get up there on the podium and complain about it, right? There's a reason I'm not in coaching anymore, okay? The lifestyle just didn't match out with my family, right? But he said, listen, the job is the job, and we can talk about calendar and getting it fixed, and I think there's things we should, but the reality is, like, we demand our players to bring excellence every day. So if our job in December is a little bit harder, we got to do it. And his tagline was, I don't know, you cancel Christmas? Not going to do that, right? So we got to attack and work. So Quinn, you played in a lot of bowl games with Coach Fleck. What was your experience with the preparation like, it going from playing in bowl games at Notre Dame to at the U with Minnesota, and kind of what was the difference, and highlight kind of how that approach from Brian Kelly, maybe PJ Fleck, and the coaches and culture was different?
Yeah, I mean, it was a big difference for me coming from Notre Dame, a program that really took pride in their tradition, some of the things that they had accomplished, whether that was a playoff appearance or national championships or Heisman Trophy winners, um, Joe Moore Award winners. For those of you who follow the Joe Moore Award, that's the most outstanding offensive line unit in the country. Um, that was the standard around there. So that's what we were striving for each and every day in the weight room, on the field in practice, in the film room. That was the standard. And so going from that to Minnesota, where we're trying to build that, right? We're trying to get back to where we were in the 60s. We're trying to, continue that run of 9, 10, 11 win seasons under PJ, continue this championship culture with bowl games. So kind of saw both ends of the coin there. With head coaching, it was completely different. And we'll get into Brian Kelly a little bit later in the pod, but Brian Kelly, when I was at Notre Dame, was not necessarily a player's coach. He was not very hands-on. He was there for practice. He was there in his office, but you weren't going to Brian Kelly's office to chop it up with him, right? And when I got to the University of Minnesota, Coach Fleck was like, "Hey, why don't you ever come in my office, say what's up?" I'm like, "Coach, you don't understand. That is not what I'm used to, not what I'm necessarily comfortable with. Not the experience in college that I had previous to showing up here." So, as time went on, I definitely warmed up to that, and PJ and I have a phenomenal relationship. But touching a little bit on bowl prep and preparation, I don't think that anybody in the country practices as hard as the Gophers do. And you can maybe attest to that, Tanner. But coming from Notre Dame, a very prestigious university and program, we didn't practice that hard at Notre Dame. We practiced hard, but not nearly as hard as we did at Minnesota. And I think that builds a certain type of grit within your program that allows you to go out and cherish a time like a bowl game, to cherish a rivalry like Iowa, to cherish a rivalry like Wisconsin. Or you're playing at the Big House, you're playing at Penn State in a whiteout game. Those types of things are built in practice, preparation by Coach Fleck and his staff, to really build those gritty players who are ready to compete every single Saturday. It's a tough week, even throughout the season. Tuesday, first and second down, right. Wednesday, third down. Those are full padded practices where you're hitting and it almost feels like a game. But they do a phenomenal job of prepping that and making sure we're ready to go. And one of the biggest things here in Minnesota is taking care of your body, because those practices are tough and you got to get ready for Saturday. A little bit about the transfer portal, just something that I thought of while you were talking. Removing that spring period is only expediting these kids' decisions to leave. Right. They might have these thoughts creep into their mind come November, December. Hey, I'm not playing as much as I want to this year. Or, we got this 5-star recruit coming in my position, maybe afraid of a little bit of competition. Then they leave. If they can't leave in the spring and they're having thoughts of it, they jump the gun and they leave. And the grass isn't always greener. So you see these kids hopping from school to school to school every year of their college career because they can. Now that's coming from a transfer myself, but I think that today's day and age of college football, kids jumping the gun on that. The grass isn't always greener, and it's allowing kids to leave whenever they want to, and probably landing at a spot that isn't as good of a position that they would be in had they stayed. So talk a little bit about that, and maybe some of the quarterbacks who have entered the portal this year already, or who might enter the portal
There's a,
because
there's a
of coaching
lot.
change or
I
anything
mean,
like that.
man, there's a lot. I think from a Gopher perspective, that's why it's so great that Drake Lindsey, right, re-signed, which is wild to me that you have guys re-signing in college football, but that's the day and age we're in. I think the next step we'll see in the evolution of college football is guys re-signing and then knowing what they're re-signing for with their contract. Okay, right now we're still calling them student athletes, which I think is great, and we got to keep that experience somewhat similar. But the reality is, how do you really know what somebody's getting, right? You see coaches in podiums throwing numbers around all the time of millions and millions, and that's alleged, but who knows? Like Bryce Underwood is a guy who at Michigan, is he going to go in the portal? Is he not? Think about the immense pressure he's walking into as a true freshman, knowing that he allegedly is getting paid 18 was the number $1 million for his contract.
Yeah.
And Dave Portnoy at Barstool got involved, and Tom Brady got involved, and the top family at Michigan donors got involved in getting him there. And then, he had a solid year for a freshman in the Big Ten, but with that price tag, expectations and reality, right? I think of the Minnesota Vikings. Some people always weren't happy with Kirk Cousins when he was making $40 million a year, but he was a phenomenal player for the Minnesota Vikings. So when you have that price tag, it increases expectations. So you got Dylan Raiola entered the portal at Nebraska. Where's he going to go? This will be his 7th school from high school. He was at a different high school every year.
Yeah.
In high school, and now his uncle was the offensive line coach and got fired. So I'm sure that made it a little bit interesting, right? He fired my uncle and all that jazz. But then I'm really interested to see, what does Nebraska do? What do they do in the portal? Who do they bring in? DJ Lagway at Florida entered the portal. Looks like he may head to Kentucky, which I think would be a great option. Will Stein hired as the University of Kentucky head coach. They hired Joe Sloan as the offensive coordinator, who was at LSU last year, who did a phenomenal job. I mean, the scheme he did, if you don't follow Dan Casey, go follow Dan Casey and see the threads he's put on about Joe Sloan's offense, how he's used creativity. And so I think if DJ Lagway ends up at Kentucky, he'd have to compete with Cutter Boley, who's a great quarterback out of Lexington Catholic High School. But, man, that could be a great landing spot for him. But, what is Dante Moore going to do at Oregon? Does he go into the draft? Because if so, then maybe Raiola to Oregon. There's so many just potential things out there right now. But I think it'll be interesting to see where these guys land, which, again, when you can have a quarterback that comes out early and says, this is where I'm going, not only does that do a huge number for the guys that want to stay, knowing that they'll have a great quarterback, but for guys entering the portal, thinking about entering the portal right now, or have made declarations but can't officially enter yet, that's something that you're looking at, is who is going to throw me the ball if I'm a receiver? Who is going to be the quarterback of the team? Because the team might go as the quarterback goes. So who do I have? Or am I going to have am I going to trust the word that so-and-so is going to go to some location, but then at the last minute, some place offers him more money, and then that happens. So I think it'll be interesting, but, there's some big dominoes falling in the quarterback transfer portal world. I think Wisconsin is a big one. Who are they going to get? Right? That's a huge need for them. They've been plagued by quarterback injuries. I mean, just gotten hammered by quarterback injuries the last 4 years. So they have to get this one right. I mean, Luke Fickell has absolutely got to get this quarterback transfer portal right, or else he might be the next head coach there next year, right? People are already calling for his head last year, and I think, it's part of the deal when you're a head coach at a big school like that. But, I mean, that's a school who has been doing research on who they want in the portal and who they're going to get and all these things. So I think that'll be really interesting. But let's shift to college football playoff a little bit. And I want to shift to a team who's not in the playoff. You're an alumni of this institution, graduated in 3 years. Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Big smart guy flex there, Quinn. Congratulations. What do you think about, one, Notre Dame not getting in, and then two, why they didn't accept a bowl, and what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people who disagree with what Notre Dame did. And I've got some thoughts on that. But as far as them not getting into the playoff because they're not in a conference, I think that's ridiculous. If they were not good enough to play in the college football playoff this year, I understand. But going 10-2 with a relatively tough schedule, and they dropped the first 2 games with, I believe, a total of 4 points. They lost the first game to Miami by 3, and then Texas A&M by 1. because of a bobbled extra point snap.
Which both of those teams are what in the top 12? They're in the playoff.
Exactly.
Which, dude, Ty Buckner.
Yeah.
How
God
bad
love
does
him.
he feel right now? You played with him, right? Oh my
I
gosh,
did.
what a grinder. Guy's great lax player, football player. Guy just loves the team. And oh man, I just feel for him, right? That's a
Yeah.
moment where you're like, man, you feel for guys like that who've been in those situations, right? He makes one mistake and costs you a big game, and I'm sure he
Totally.
feels pretty
And
guilty. And so, like, Ty, we want to say we love you and we're fans of you at
yeah,
the HM
absolutely.
Pod.
Tyler, we love you. But in Tyler's mind, he knew that when he dropped that snap and they lost to Texas A&M, it wasn't just, damn it, we lost. It was everything running through his head that, okay, now we have 2 losses. We can't lose another game, right? And even still, in hindsight, now, today, he realizes that snap cost him likely a college football playoff appearance. That game would have gone to overtime, and who knows what would have happened. And you can't blame a loss on one play. But I think when you look at the talent on Notre Dame's team, offense, defense, even special teams, you look at the talent, you look at a guy like Jeremiah Love, you look at a young quarterback like CJ Carr, those guys are plenty good enough to play in the college football playoff. That team is stacked right now. That offensive line is protecting their balls off. And 10-2, yes, they lost to Miami. Yes, Miami had the same resume, if you want to call it that, going in, looking at the college football playoff, seeing who they were going to pick, and they picked Miami over Notre Dame. But when you look at the other 10 games that Notre Dame played in since the Texas A&M game, they were 0-2, and then they went 10-0 since then. They beat their teams. They blew out every other team, right? There was no drastic loss. Last year, in 2024, they lost to NIU at home, still made the playoff, and made it to the title game, right? So Notre Dame is plenty good enough to compete with these teams in the playoff. They're much better than a team like JMU, than a team like Tulane. And I think if they played Miami again, they'd beat them. I think if they played Texas A&M again, they'd beat them. So Notre Dame was salty, obviously, for not getting into the playoffs. And so with that, they decided that they were going to boycott the bowl game. The only thing that I have hesitation on as an alumni, as a guy who wasn't necessarily a starter at Notre Dame, a guy who was fighting for snaps and just needed all the preparation that I could get in order to see some time on the field. Removing that bowl game experience hurts a guy who's on the bench, maybe a 2 or maybe a young guy. Think about CJ Carr. He needs all the experience he can get.
Yeah.
It's his first year starting.
Great player.
Another game for him would be crucial going into the 2026 season, like we touched on with the Gophers. So I think it was a rash decision by the decision makers at Notre Dame, but it really stripped that opportunity from the players of more development, a fun bowl experience, and just more film. So at the end of the day, I think it was the wrong decision, but they're not going to join a conference anytime soon, in my opinion. Even if it helps them with the playoff.
Why would you?
Yeah, they're petitioning for, or I think this passed, but they're talking about how they're going to get, if they're ranked in the top 12 before championship week, they're automatically in. And teams are up in arms about that. They're saying they're going to remove Notre Dame from their schedule, their regular season schedule. But I think that's fair. If you're a top 12 team, because of your record, because of how you handled business, you dropped a couple to 2 really good teams this year, but those 10 games were dominant performances and they should be in the playoff. They shouldn't have rejected their bowl bid, but they should be in the playoff. I don't know if you agree, but feel free to touch on whatever you want.
I mean, I think their losses are better than Miami's losses. The difference
sure.
is Miami won the head-to-head, and Miami's in the ACC conference. So if you don't have an ACC team in the playoff, that's a huge, debacle because that's a Power Four conference. They don't get in, right? That's an issue. So I think that plays into it. But I think James Madison, right? I mean, Billy Napier's a new head coach, right? Bob Chesney he's going to take the job at UCLA. Now, I think James Madison is going to continue to be a G5 contender. I think that, Josh Pate on his show talked about like the G5 should just have a totally separate playoff and fund it that way if we're going to get rid of bowl games. I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
But I like to see the group of 5 guys get a shot. I think it's just how do you make it work? So I'm interested this week to see what does Tulane do against Ole Miss, right? And then James Madison against Oregon. I mean, I think Oregon's going to handle it pretty well, beat
Yeah.
James Madison.
You
but
could say that.
but I think those are situations where you look at it like those guys deserve a chance, and the fact that there's 2 in is pretty unique. And there's all the talk about should college football playoff expand and all the things about that. But let's talk about a great hire inside of the Big Ten, Penn State, right? I mean, they had an entire debacle of who they were going to hire, right? Lane Kiffin's name was thrown around. You had Jeff Brown say he didn't want it. All these people who said they didn't want the job.
Brian Dable, right? Giants head coach.
I mean, allegedly, right? Who do you know? How do you know for sure? But I mean, apparently he was in it, which I think he's a great coach. He coached John Michael Schmitz and Tyler Nubin. But Penn State hires Matt Campbell out of Iowa State, a culture builder, a tough, true football guy, D3 roots out of Mount Union, has turned Iowa State around, left totally in a gracious way. Their AD said it's, we can't replace what he's done for Iowa State Cyclone football, right? Without Matt Campbell, Iowa State might not be in the Big 12 anymore. They might have dropped out of the Power Four with the conference realignment, right? Who knows?
Right.
So Matt Campbell truly saved and brought back to life Iowa State Cyclone football. Talk about that hire. I think it's a phenomenal hire. I think he's going to do a great job at Penn State with the resources he's got allocated. Decided not to retain Andy Kotelnicki, the offense coordinator at Penn State, who is a great coach, and then also Jim Knowles at Penn State. The defense coordinator at Penn State, who was at Ohio State, formerly Oklahoma State, bringing in his own guys, which I think is a good move. He's going to do it his way. They're going to give him total freedom to do that because Penn State has to pay out Jim Knowles' contract and Andy Kotelnicki's contract. So they're not worried about that. They're giving him the autonomy. Do you think Matt Campbell is going to be a success at Penn State? Why or why not?
Absolutely. I think it comes down to the type of coach he is. I don't know if you watched his press conference, but he was in tears pretty much the whole time, just with excitement and pure gratitude that he got an opportunity to coach at Penn State. His family, he grew up, 2 hours away from there. And you look at the type of program he's built at Iowa State, it's the best era in Iowa State football. And he's bringing that mentality to Penn State. And I know we talk about how he's going to turn around Penn State. I mean, they were in the playoffs last year. They were in the semifinals
turn around,
last
right?
year.
Like,
so
that's expectations in college football now.
Right. So he's not necessarily turning it around. He's still going to collect, many 4 or 5-star recruits, and he's going to develop them. But you think about the type of recruits he brought in at Iowa State. He was getting 3-star, maybe a couple 4-star guys, and turning them into a top 15 program almost every year. I believe he almost made the playoffs last year, except for maybe one loss that kept him out. So at Penn State, he's going to have the pride of that university on his shoulders for recruiting, for development, and all he wants to do is succeed at Penn State. And I think he's a phenomenal coach. I think he's a phenomenal person. Met him a couple times, and I think he's got all the tools in the world to succeed there. He'll have a much larger NIL budget, I'm pretty sure. And kids want to play at Penn State. Kids will want to play for a coach with that much passion and pride for the university. It'll be interesting how this goes with the transfer portal, how many guys are going to leave Penn State, and how successful is he going to be in recruiting versus a guy like James Franklin at Virginia Tech. I would imagine James Franklin's doing everything in his power to get some of those best players to Virginia Tech for a couple of years, just at least while he gets off the ground there. So that is a true rebuild.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that a little bit. The history
Yeah.
of Virginia Tech football, back when they had Michael Vick, Tyrod Taylor, some of these guys that they were winning the ACC dang near every year.
Coach
My
Beamer.
oldest brother,
Yeah.
Colin, played there from 2007 to 2011, and he was in every year. Orange Bowl, ACC championship game, Chick-fil-A Bowl, Sugar Bowl, all this. So that was an era of college football with Frank Beamer at the helm as the head coach, Beamer
Mhm.
ball. My brother was a specialist,
right.
so that rang true to him. But
Mhm.
that era of Virginia Tech football was, a top 5 contender every year. That was before the college football playoff existed, even when it was 4 teams. So it was the top 2 teams in the country played for the title game. They never competed for that, at least while my brother was there. But in today's era of college football, they would be in the playoffs. They'd be in the semifinals. They'd have a top 4 bid
Yeah.
pretty much every year of that era. So with these kids from Virginia, these kids in that area who grew up in the 757 area code, they want to play for the Hokies. They want to play for Virginia Tech. Some of the kids coming up today might have not necessarily watched Tyrod Taylor. I'm getting a little old for that, but kids want to play for their home state. And if James Franklin builds some aura around that program, and kind of recreates that aura and brings in 4 or 5-star recruits coming out of that area code, coming out of that state, I think Virginia Tech can be a top 5 contender very soon. James Franklin is a great coach. I think he'll compete very well in the ACC. But talk a little bit about what you see from James Franklin and how he's going to turn that program around.
Yeah, I think he's going to do a phenomenal job. I think it's also like Virginia Tech has pledged a lot in NIL. I think it's $200 million for athletic department they've pledged.
Yeah.
So they're willing to go out there and win and compete. And that attracts a guy like James Franklin. I think also when you look at it, James Franklin decided to retain Brent Pry. This is very uncommon, who was the head coach at Virginia Tech before. Prior to that was a defensive coordinator for James Franklin at Penn State. So he replaces him and he keeps him as a defensive coordinator. Talk about no ego and doing what you think is best for the program. I think that's going to be a phenomenal move, and I can't wait to see how that plays out. But also, when you look at James Franklin, you're going from the Big Ten to the ACC, which we see this year. We talked about ACC barely got one team in Miami. Okay, the ACC is a great conference. The year before was a different story with SMU. I think when you look at it from Franklin's perspective, playing in the ACC, you do have a better chance to make the playoff than if you would have taken the job at, say, Florida, if that was offered. In the
Right.
SEC, where you have to play Georgia, Ole Miss, Alabama, right? Teams of that nature. Now, I think the ACC is going to continue to get better and is a phenomenal conference, but he has family that lives there in Blacksburg. And I think people love Vatek ball. Enter Sandman is one of the coolest traditions in college football.
Gosh.
But I just want to
Cool.
share a quick story about Brent Pry. 2019, we're playing Penn State. They're number 4 in the country. We're 18 or 19, maybe 17. We beat them, played electric, big moment, probably what I'm remembered for as a quarterback at Minnesota. At the end of the game, I have the ball.
Probably
I'm freaking out.
the
I'm like,
biggest
this
win
is
in Gopher
crazy.
football history in the last
Yeah.
15, 20 years, easily.
Yeah. Could be, for sure. USC's up there when they beat them at home. Coy Parrish had a heck of a game, Max Brosmer. But Brent Pry walks over to me. I take the final knee. I'm freaking out. He walks right up to me with a smile on his face and says, "Congratulations, Tanner. You played exactly how I thought you would play. Great job and good luck."
Wow.
And he's like, "I'm Brent Pry, the defense coordinator." I was like, I never forget that moment of him. Yeah, him saying that they just lost. We beat Sean Clifford, who's a friend of mine. And, that just kind of shows you a little glimpse into his character and who he is. And that's why a guy like that can go and coach at the same school and go from being the head coach to the defense coordinator because he believes in the head coach's vision and mission so much. And it's not about him, it's about the players. And I think it's just really unique and really cool. Let's talk about a flip
Brent
side.
Pry is all class, by the way.
Mm,
The Gophers played Virginia Tech last year in their bowl game. That was my final game as a Gopher.
yeah.
And we're doing media a couple of days before the game. And I'm talking to the press along with guys like Max, Darius. I believe Danny Striga was there. And Brent Pry comes up to each of us after our little media talk, shakes our hand, looks us in the eye, and wishes us good luck. And after the game,
That's
then
awesome.
too, as we won, it was our final game as Gophers. He came up to each of us and said, "Great game and congratulations." So kind of a similar story there. Back to James Franklin a little bit. I was recruited by James Franklin at Penn State. I took an official visit there coming out of high school, and I show up to the hotel where you got the big hotel room with all the treats and snacks and big welcome sign, whatever. James Franklin and the entire staff is at this hotel waiting for me and my parents and my brother just to greet us. Right. So
Wow.
that's the type of guy James Franklin is. He's not just in it for the 4 or 5 stars. He wants to build those relationships with you, with your family. He is an all-time coach, and I think him paired with a guy like Brent Pry, the sky's the limit for that type of program with those guys leading the team. Let's go back to Big Ten ball a little bit. Kind of a big deal going on in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Obviously nothing that you would wish on your biggest enemy to happen to you if any of your friends are playing at Michigan or anybody that you love as a Michigan fan. This is kind of close to the end of the world for that program right now. So talk a little bit about that. Unfortunate what's going on at the head coach position, but how are they going to bounce back? Who are they going to promote?
Well,
Who are they going to bring in? And how is this going to affect the roster?
Yeah, roster management will be huge, right? And I think all those guys, their transfer portal window is now immediately open. But when you're at Michigan, I think some of those guys are going to wait and see who they hire. So them getting a hire quickly, the right hire, is really important, right?
Yeah.
When Penn State hired Matt Campbell, it was after signing day. They ended up losing some recruits. I think their recruiting class was in the hundreds, which is very, not common there at Penn State. And so now you look at it right now with Michigan is you have to make the right hire, and you got to, it's been said that they're going to open up the checkbook and go get a guy that they want, right? Coach Fleck's name was on the initial top 5 hot board. Do I think he would be great there? I really do. I think he'd be a culture stabilizer, drive the mission forward. But I want to see him at Minnesota as an alum, and I want to see him continue to succeed.
How do you think
we're not
that would
stirring
affect
any rumors of that?
How do you think that would affect the tradition of Michigan football? You think about Coach Fleck and his culture and row the boat and all the slogans that he has. I feel like a program like Michigan, with all the tradition that they have, wouldn't necessarily accept that, at least right away. If Coach Fleck showed up and was successful on the field, things might change. But I think that they would be hesitant to accept anything other than being a Michigan man.
Yeah, I agree. But I don't know, right? I really don't know how they would accept that, because you're gonna look at who they're gonna bring in is gonna want to bring in a new culture regardless, but continue things of the traditional Michigan way. But at the end of the day, they want to win, and they want a guy who's going to be a winner, and that's what I think is most important when you're looking at who they bring in. But they need somebody to stabilize things. I mean, we've got interim head coach Biff Poggi now there, who's a character, but people love him. I mean, right? Guy is loves ball, loves players, to stabilize things. When Sharon Moore was out during the season. And so now I think what's really important is, you know, if you have your hot board list, can we gonna move quickly? I mean, I think it's terrible for Sharon Moore. What he did obviously is not right. And my heart goes out to him, man. I mean, I think it's easy for us all to say like, "Oh, I would never do that," but um, he was in that situation, and I pray for him and his family, for reconciliation, for things, uh, to restore there with his family. That's first and foremost, right? You can look at it and be like, well, he, lost, a dream job and all those things, and that's true. Um, and I can't imagine how hard and difficult that is for him to swallow. But actions have a reaction, and I think, um, again, my heart, my what I like to do is I'm like, man, I feel for him of what happened, what he did. Obviously, what he did was inexcusable, and you
Mhm.
cannot do, and is results in being dismissed from your job at a major university. But I mean, I'm praying for his family, and hopefully reconciliation comes. But I think a great name for Michigan. I do think Coach PJ Fleck would be phenomenal at Michigan. I do. I don't want to get into rumor mill of I know anything, because I do not. I know absolutely zero information. I think he'd be great at a lot of places, but I know where he's elite at, and that's the University of Minnesota, because he has been over the past uh soon to be 10 years,
Right.
right? Well, in 2 years, right? Came in 2017. So, um, I don't know who they're gonna hire. I know they're gonna swing for the fences. I know Kenny Dillingham is a name that's getting thrown around. I think Kenny Dillingham would be a great job. And then the question there is, if Kenny Dillingham goes to Michigan, does Bryce Underwood stay? If Bryce Underwood doesn't stay, can Kenny get Sam Levitt from Arizona State, who's already declared that he's intends to transfer to come to Michigan? They have the relationship. He knows the scheme. He knows the offense. I think if Bryce Underwood decides to leave and Kenny Dillingham goes to Michigan, Sam Levitt would be the immediate guy of let's go and get him. But your thoughts on the Michigan debacle and all the things that are going on right now?
Yeah, similar to you, I'm an empathetic guy, so my heart goes out to him. Um, but I think that him acting the way he acted really just goes to show how hard it is when you have that stage, right? When you're the head coach at Michigan and crap hits the fan, like that is on a national stage, right?
Yeah.
That's nothing you can brush under the rug.
Hmm.
And it's rumored that this was tried to, people were trying to hide this, but
In the summer. Yeah.
at the end of the day, it came out, right? And really lit a flame in that building. So, right now they're trying to put that flame out. And I think with the tradition that Michigan has, I think that making a good hire will just be the first step of putting that fire out, right? Maybe a good quarterback, maybe retention of Bryce Underwood is something that will continue to put that flame out. But um,
Hmm.
at the end of the day, I think it's going to be hard to bounce back from this, especially given the previous years of Michigan football with the cheating scandal and the sign stealing, and Sharon Moore being suspended one or two other times before this for
Yeah.
recruiting violations, stuff like that. I don't believe Sharon Moore was the right guy for that job in the first place.
Yeah.
And that is kind of coming to fruition here as we learn about the type of things he was doing behind the camera. So
Yeah.
um, it's unfortunate, but I'm looking forward to seeing who gets that job and how things shake there with the quarterback, and who all leaves, who all stays, who all comes in. Um, Obviously, a bunch of things are rumored in today's day and age of college football. But one thing we got to touch on as far as rumors go is our former defensive line coach Winston DeLattiboudere
Yeah.
the third.
No longer a rumor, right? Official.
Official.
Official. Let's do a quick X check. You keep chatting about Winston. I'm going to check X.
Okay, you go ahead and do that. Yeah, I mean, from what I understand, for those of you that don't know, Winston DeLattiboudere the third, defensive lineman for the Golden Gophers, he graduated in 2019 or 2020. Had a brief stint in the NFL, and then he got into coaching. So he bounced around a little bit. He was with Oregon and then Akron, and then to the University of Minnesota as a defensive line coach, phenomenal person. He was here briefly as a coach before he was promoted to be the defensive line coach for the Arizona Cardinals for just one season, which I think he did a great job there. And I
Coach
believe
Calais
his dream.
Campbell, he's 27 years old. Winston is. Coach Calais Campbell, who's played for I don't know how many years in the NFL.
Yeah,
but pretty crazy.
Calais Campbell's been playing since Winston was, I don't know, 10. But
yeah,
so that's
wild.
crazy to think about. But Winston is now, I don't know if it's rumored anymore. Tanner's checking X here, but
it's official.
Winston, it's official that he's leaving the Arizona Cardinals.
Twitter, X, says that he is leaving the Arizona Cardinals to take the Michigan State defensive line job, which will put him back with none other than Joe Rossi, who he played for and coached for at Minnesota, right? New head coach at Michigan State, Pat Fitzgerald. I think Michigan State is primed to take off. May not be in 26, but Pat Fitzgerald will be at Michigan State and he'll be there for a long time. We know he's loyal. He kind of was under some allegations and stuff, and all that stuff cleared. We don't need to talk about that. But Pat Fitzgerald is a phenomenal culture builder, a great defensive mind, a tough-nosed football coach that fits Michigan State. With the resources they have to offer, I think he can make Michigan State bring it back to the days of Mark D'Antonio, maybe even higher, have them competing at the top of the Big Ten Conference. And Winston going to Michigan State, I think is interesting. Like you said, I think his dream is to be a college football head coach, which he could be a head coach potentially before he's 30.
Right.
Which is wild. And I think the sky's the limit for this guy from a coaching perspective. He's a great recruiter, one of the best, I think, in the country, relationship builder, energy driver. And this guy, man, he has such a bright future. He's 27 years old, defensive line coach. He's been the defensive line coach for an NFL team and 2 teams in the Big Ten already at 27.
Incredible.
That is so rare, right? Absolutely
incredible resume.
This guy's
right.
Yeah.
And the rumors that were swirling about Winston in the past day or two was A, Michigan State, but B, what do the Gophers do with the defensive line coach position? Right? They fired Coach Dot. He was the D-line coach this past year. He took over for Winston. But people were talking maybe they bring Winston back. Maybe they bring him back to be the defensive line coach. How long is Coach Fleck going to be the head coach of the University of Minnesota? And who will take over? Right? You got a guy like Winston who would be a phenomenal head coach, I believe, in the Big Ten, right? For his alma mater. So people were talking that they would bring Winston back to be the D-line coach and hopefully the soon replacement of PJ Fleck. But I think that Winston did the right thing. I think he took the right job because you're not promised anything by coming back to Minnesota. You don't know how long Coach Fleck's going to be the head coach here. And you don't know if that job is ultimately yours at the end of the day. So he took the best position for him to coach under Joe Rossi, who's a phenomenal defensive coordinator. And then I know what he's thinking. He's going to let God figure out how he's going to become the next head coach elsewhere. But at least for right now in his career, I believe he made the right move.
Yeah. And again, who knows? I'm sure he would be a great head coach whenever Coach Fleck decides to either move on or retire, whenever that may be. I hope, as a Gopher alumni and fan of Winston, that Winston gets a shot. Greg Harbaugh, those guys get a shot. Who knows how that all pans out? That's way, forward landscaping thinking. But I think Winston is going to be a head coach sooner than later at some program somewhere, if that's what he wants to do. Let's talk quickly about the Heisman. Fernando Mendoza, Indiana University quarterback, had a phenomenal season. First overall team led Indiana to a 12-0 record and a Big Ten, or 13-0, and a Big Ten championship title. Wins the Heisman over Diego Pavia. Diego Pavia is not very happy about it. I think the Heisman voters made the right call with Fernando. I think Diego's a great player, but I think Fernando deserved it, taking Indiana to win the Big Ten. Thoughts on Fernando winning the Heisman Trophy?
Yeah, I think there was a lot of stipulation of, oh, it should have been Diego. It goes to the most outstanding player. He had the best, most rushing yards, most passing yards, and played one less game, blah, blah, blah. I think when you look at the conference that he played in, especially this year in the Big Ten, right? Ohio State, beating Oregon at Oregon, beating Iowa at Iowa, and really turning this program in the second year of Curt Cignetti's tenure here, taking them to being the number 1 seed and winning the Big Ten title game. The quarterback, and you can touch on this, the team goes where the quarterback goes, right?
Yeah.
And ultimately he performed at a very high level each and every week to keep his team undefeated, right? So I think he is totally deserving of that. I don't think there was any politics that came into it. I think the reason that Fernando Mendoza is the best quarterback, best player in college football is because of his center, Pat Coogan. Shout out Pat Coogan. And his offensive line protecting him, right? Like they're up for the Joe Moore Award. They're a semifinalist. Hopefully they win that too. They continue to take care of business in the playoffs. They ultimately will win that award, I believe. But I think Fernando Mendoza is totally deserving of that award, and I can't wait to see what he does in the playoffs.
Agreed. Quick landscape into round 1 college football playoff. Friday night game, 7 p.m. Alabama at Oklahoma. Who wins?
I got Alabama in this one. I know people are unsure because of how they handled business in the SEC championship game, but I think they're a better program than Oklahoma at this point, and I think they got all the talent in the world to go out and win that game to continue their run in the playoffs. How do you feel about the Texas A&M Miami game?
Texas A&M Miami. I'm gonna go Texas A&M. Now Colin Klein, the offense coordinator for A&M, is gonna be the head coach at Kansas State. Already announced, had his introductory press conference, going back home to where he led Kansas State he was a play caller there before. Great player and coach there. I think Texas A&M gets it done. Marcel Reed is great. It's going to be close though. But man, Kyle Field at 11 a.m. is going to be pretty cool. Would have loved for this to be the night game at Kyle Field. That would have been pretty sick. But we'll see.
Man,
okay,
right?
12th man. Tulane, Ole Miss. Tulane head coach John Sumrall has been announced as the head coach at Florida, still coaching Tulane in the college football playoff, has just gifted from his own personal assets $100,000 to Tulane to continue for retention and player development. John Sumrall, graduate of the University of Kentucky, I think is a 101 coach. Tulane, Ole Miss, who wins and why?
I got Tulane in this one. I know that they're the underdogs, but Ole Miss, all of the fire around
Lane
Ole Miss
Kiffin's
with
not
Lane
there.
Kiffin leaving.
Yeah.
They don't have their head coach. Everything's up in the air. They don't know who's staying, who's going to LSU with Lane Kiffin. They're not focused on beating Tulane, and they're going to slip, and Tulane's going to take advantage of it and be the first group of 5 team to make it to the semifinals of the playoff.
That would be special. Pete Golding at Ole Miss has been not only hired as the interim, but the head coach for the Ole Miss Hotty Toddy Rebels. So that'll be interesting. Great defensive mind under the Saban and Kirby Smart tree. So last game, James Madison, Oregon.
Oregon's
I think we
taking care of
both have
business
Oregon's taking care of business. James Madison's a great team, but looking forward to what Billy Napier can do with the Dukes. And I think Oregon's a team who can make a deep run here and make some things. Now let's talk about, again, as we close up here, Indiana, Fernando Mendoza. Do you think they have a legit chance, and why wouldn't we think they do, to win the national championship and go undefeated for Indiana, and why?
I think the only team that would give Indiana trouble is Ohio State on the other side of this bracket. I think Indiana's going to take care of business, and they're going to meet Ohio State in the final game in Miami, where Fernando Mendoza is from, and we'll see what happens there. It's hard to beat a good team
Hometown.
twice. Hard to beat Ohio State twice. But
Yeah.
Indiana's got something special going on this year, and I think that ultimately it'll come down to that game. If Indiana wins it all, it'll come down to the final game. They will not be stopped before they get there. So
I love it.
I don't know if you agree with that.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting. I think Indiana has every reason to believe that they can not only win the national championship, but they should be the favorites to win the national championship. I'd love to see Indiana and Georgia and what could happen there. But yeah, man, in closing, we want to hear from you. So we want to hear questions from you. You guys can DM us on any of the social platforms, X, Instagram. But what would really help us, right? So we want to answer the questions that you have. What would really help us is if you liked, followed, and subscribed to the Honorable Mentions podcast. That would help us as we start to get going and just bring an authenticity talking about college football. We're not trying to out here get clip hot takes. We're trying to just talk about real ball, highlight player and coach stories, and bring locker room conversations about college football to the media. And man, it would really help us out if you guys could like, subscribe, and follow. And with that being said, we're going to close out and go to an interview with potentially, maybe, who knows, a Heisman finalist for next season, and the one and only Drake Lindsey. So I hope you enjoy this exclusive interview with Drake Lindsey on why he decided to return, what he would say to a future wide receiver who enters the portal on January 2nd on why he should come play at the University of Minnesota and play with him. So thank you guys for tuning in. Like, follow, subscribe. We'll be back with more episodes weekly and can't wait to join and spread this community. Thank you, guys. All right, guys, welcome on our guest to the Honorable Mention podcast, the one and only Drake Lindsey, quarterback of the Golden Gophers, who just signed, which is weird to say, as Drake just said, who just re-signed to be the Gophers quarterback going into next year. Drake, how you doing? Welcome to the pod.
Doing good, man. Appreciate you guys having me.
Yeah. Quinn, you and Drake played together, right? So Drake's first year, Drake, we've been able to get to know each other. We're, training a little bit, doing a bunch of different stuff. But before I let Quinn kind of ask you some questions, man, just from a former, very washed up Gopher quarterback, it brings me a lot of joy to watch you play football, bro. And I think we talked about it on our first episode of just watching your progression throughout the season. And obviously you're in a phenomenal quarterback room with the guys in that room, Harbaugh, Coach Keegan O'Hara, who's got such a bright future in the coaching profession. But watching your progression from what you can do, athletically and just with the ball, but also just from a leadership perspective as a former Gopher quarterback and alumni, man, it just made me really proud to watch that. So I just want to say thank you for what you did last season and what you're going to continue to do. And I'm very happy that you re-signed. I'm very happy. It brought me a lot of joy. So thank you for that too.
Yeah, I appreciate you, man. It means a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude.
Quinn,
I couldn't
what do you
echo
got
that.
for Drizzy Drake?
Yeah, I couldn't echo what you said anymore. I played with Drake last year, and that was a blast getting to know him and watching his progression as a young quarterback under Max. So, Drake, we just have a handful of questions for you just to kind of kick things off here. This will be our first legit episode as the Honorable Mentions podcast. So we decided that with this interview, it's really important to hit on the balance between having confidence and humility as a quarterback, especially in your position, a guy who showed up as a freshman, highly touted, big time recruit for the Gophers to get, and then to learn from a guy like Max and how that prepared you to start in just your second season. So, I guess we'll kick things off as a young quarterback. How were you able to kind of convince yourself you belong before others were able to kind of tell you that, or for you to prove that on the field?
Yeah, I would say honestly it came from my freshman year. I feel like I learned so much from all the older guys. I felt like I got to come in at a perfect time for Minnesota because there were so many old guys that had been there. With you being a sixth year, Max coming in as a sixth year, Coop. There were so many veterans on the team, like Nick Callerup, Jameson, where it was I could really come in and learn and just be myself as well. I feel like I have always been, myself in any area that I'm at. But I feel like I got to this position and was able to be successful this year was because the preparation I got to see from Max. Honestly, like he taught me so much just in the quarterback realm. Like when I got there, I thought I knew so much quarterback, and then like talking to him, I learned really quickly that I didn't know much because he had played so much football and had seen so much. And I mean, you knew Max how smart how easy it was to talk to him about football. Like he just made things very simple, and that's something that like went a long way for me because I mean, reflecting on this year. Like when I thought about like as my freshman self, I thought I was able to like ready to play. And then reflecting on this year, and you realize how challenging college football is once you really get into the thick of it. And week after week, Big Ten after Big Ten, it gets really challenging. I reflected and I was like, it made me think how, I wasn't necessarily ready to play as a true freshman as much as you want to think you are. And I was really grateful to be able to learn from Max and all the older guys and how the culture goes, how everything works. Because it's a unique culture with Coach Fleck and a unique system. Um, and it's a very challenging offense, as you know, with Coach Harbaugh, with all the kills and alerts, how many plays you're getting in and out of, attempting to get your offense in the best run every single play. And I think the most challenging thing for me, like I got a lot better this year, but was the protection piece. Getting the O line into the right slide, making sure I can get my back out, and obviously you're not always successful at that, but always attempting to, get your offense in the best look was I think the main thing that I learned from Max, and obviously Coach Harbaugh has changed so much in 24 months, like from when I got here. So he's been huge for my development. I would say him, Coach Fleck, and Keegan have really changed me as a quarterback, and that's main reason I don't want to leave Minnesota is because the development I feel like in the pace that I'm on.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's
that's awesome.
fantastic. Sorry, I'm going to jump in quick. Tell the world about Keegan O'Hara, quarterback coach at the University of Minnesota. What makes him a guy that you can trust and lean on, and what are those conversations? Because we see him like right on TV. If you're
Yeah,
a casual fan, right, he's the guy wearing the baseball hat,
yeah.
big M, talking to you, very calm all the time. But what is he doing throughout the week that just helps you feel so prepared? And him and Harbaugh and Flex alignment has obviously been great. But just tell the world about Keegan O'Hara.
Yeah, I think it was really easy to respect him because I think he came from Ohio State. He had been at Western Michigan with all them previously, but I mean, when someone comes from Ohio State and they've seen great quarterbacks, he was around C.J. Stroud for 2 years, and when you first start talking to him and you hear that, it's ultimately like you want to start picking his brain and seeing what he learned from C.J. Stroud because that was a second overall pick in the draft and led that team to a college football playoff appearance. So I think when you have a guy like that that's young but has seen a lot of it, and been at one of the best programs in the country with some of the best players in the country. You just start. I just started asking about CJ. A lot of things about him, like what he did in the building. What was his leadership styles? What was he like as a person? Because ultimately, you want to see you navigate like who you are as a leader, and that's one thing I'm really developing. I feel like is who's Drake Lindsey as a leader, and I've grown a lot in that. You find things that you like and don't like as a leader. But back to Keegan, sorry. Keegan's great though. I think throughout the week
That's a good going on leadership. That's good. You can
yeah,
drop a lot of
yeah,
things, some
yeah.
knowledge to people. But yeah, feel free to take it wherever you want to take it.
Yeah, but no, Keegan, throughout the week he's really calming because like Tuesdays and Wednesday practices can be pretty challenging because you're on Tuesday you're only like 2 days into really attempting to understand the defense and what
Yeah,
they
and
bring
it's
on first
all
and second
first and second
down,
down,
all
right?
first and second down. So really understanding like where people's alignments are and getting your pressure tells, getting your coverage tells and everything, and then also executing your plays and the new formations that are in and all that kind of thing. And Keegan's just really calming, when I'm not in, and Harbaugh's still coaching the whole offense. I can go to him and just ask questions about, like just little reminders. I feel like that's the main thing Keegan's really good with is he understands our offense and understands by Tuesday, Wednesday, all the alerts and kills. So just having him by my side for reminders, constant reminders, is really good. And then being able to talk to him about life and everything outside of it's very helpful.
You touched on something that's really important with leadership, and I want to get into that a little bit.
Hmm.
Um, who Drake Lindsey is as a leader, right? We see you
Yeah.
on the field on Saturdays. We see you dropping dimes. We see you commanding the offense. But who you are as a leader is really important. Stiff arm. Who you are as a leader is really important to the team and to college football as a whole. Having that continuity at the
Yeah.
quarterback position. So, in today's college football, a world of transfers, veteran guys, 5th, 6th year guys. How were you able to, or what are some ways you were able to find credibility with that team when you got a guy
Yeah.
who just showed up or a guy who's been there for 5-6 years to really be the leader of the team? I know PJ puts a lot of pressure on the quarterback in that program to be the leader of the team, not just the offense. And so touch on that a little bit on how you're able to gain some of that credibility throughout the offseason and throughout the season.
Yeah, I think in January, it's challenging when you're, going into the year, you're supposed to be the starter, but you still got to earn it. It can be challenging to be the leader, reflecting on it, the leader that I wanted to be because I hadn't earned, the credit of going out on Saturdays and taking a shot for my brothers, leaving it all out there on the field. And that's where I feel like you ultimately gain the respect piece of it. So I think this offseason, it was pretty challenging for me. And I did my best of my abilities, but it's hard to be the leader that you want to be when you haven't, earned your stripes and played on the field. So I think the biggest thing in this world though, with the transactional period of just transfers and everything is, first gaining that, getting that friendship, getting that bond with a brother, because I think that's the biggest thing with somebody that may have been at 2 or 3 programs before is really understanding why they're transferring, what's been the issue with them leaving schools, and attempting to make this place the best it's been.
Right.
But it obviously starts when you transfer in with the winter workouts, showing up early, being one of the first one in, last ones out. I think that's when you can early, gain respect from your brothers. And then once you get the spring ball and summer and fall camp, obviously playing on the field and earning the respect from your coaches, and just, never really, I think the main thing that you can find is, that can be challenging now is a lot of people try to ride the ups and downs of a football season. When you lose, everything, the world feels like it's crashing down and everyone wants to transfer and leave. But then when you win, everyone's riding a high. So I think the main thing, I want to do as a leader next year is just, not allow any BCD, as we call it in our program, as blaming, complaining, all that stuff. I think when one person starts, you know, being negative and not taking accountability and pushing the
Yeah.
blame on others instead of reflecting on what they could have done better, I think that's ultimately when a locker room starts to infect, and then multiple people start talking negative. So I think the main thing, me as a leader this year is just holding the standard so high that, maybe I can't even reach it, to
That's good.
ultimately get us to where we want to get.
You talked
For
about the
sure.
portal a little bit, right? And you made a big announcement in the last week, deciding to
Mhm.
re-sign and come back to Minnesota, which Gopher fans and alumni and everybody was really excited about. One thing for me, you don't have to say this, I'm saying it, is I would love to see a lot of great receivers hop in that portal and come and play with you,
Yeah.
because I want to see top receiver talent with you and see what you can do with that, because I know it's going to be special. Not to say anything about the receivers in your room right now. I know you love them, got great
Mhm.
coaching, all that jazz. But I'm pretty sure you're probably going to be pitching to some receiver recruits on why they should come play at University of Minnesota, and really like why they should come play with you. Can you tell us, if I'm a receiver and I hop in the portal, and let's say I'm Ole Miss, Michigan State, LSU, what are you saying about like why should I go play at the University of Minnesota, and why should I pick to go to Minneapolis and play in this beautiful West Coast offense with a quarterback who's got a cannon of an arm
Yeah.
and can command the huddle and lead? Why should I go play there? Tell me what you would tell me if I was a receiver, which I know is far fetched.
Yeah, I think obviously the first thing I look at, like when a wide receiver enters a portal, is like what's his stats like. Obviously I want to see how much he's played, watch his film, break that kind of stuff down. But obviously when we first start talking, I've been talking. Oh no, I haven't been talking to anybody. But
And we'll cut that
um
out.
yeah, as they start entering, talking to them about just their family, everything, getting to know them as a person, and then just starting, pitch Minnesota. I think the one thing that Minnesota offers that a lot of schools can't offer is how much you learn with the offense. I think that's one of Max's biggest things why he's on an NFL roster, is because the knowledge he gained from Minnesota with the offense. Like we have 30 syllable play calls sometimes, and like I don't think anyone else in the country is doing that, which can really develop you and ultimately turn you into an NFL receiver. And then I think when you look at the receivers that we've had here with Daniel Jackson, who ended up he's bouncing around and not on an NFL roster right now, but I mean he had like almost 1,000 yards. I think when you get a receiver that is very dominant and a very good receiver, I think you can easily go for 1,000 in our offense with the play action game, and then obviously it
Yeah,
starts with
easy.
the run game in this offense. Like if you have a good run game, it can I mean, it can make the offense go very quickly because I mean, then the whole playbook's open with the play action pass. I mean,
Run the ball.
everything's open.
RTV.
If you can run the ball, it helps out everything.
Yeah.
So
Talk about your O-line a little bit. I know we touched on receivers and likely something that we could go after here in the portal and then in the coming months. But with your offensive line, seemingly four starters, at least in that Badger game, could be returning this year. This upcoming year in 26. Maybe a transfer tackle, maybe a young guy develops. You never know. But talk about that a little bit and how important that continuity is to your confidence as a quarterback and, being able to go out there and really do your thing and not have to worry about what's in front of you.
Yeah, 100%. I think Greg's done a tremendous job with that room, really shaping it and developing it. And it was his first year as a leader too, which I think when you look at the whole offense as a whole, we had a lot of young leadership, which is we get to reflect on and learn from and see what we didn't do well and see what we did well, and then obviously shape that and make this offense way better next year. But I think Greg will do a great job of that if he decides to come back. And I mean, really, when you look at it, I mean, Nathan Roy just got named Freshman All-American. He's coming back. Which I mean, we all knew he would be really well. I think everyone saw his potential. He just had to, get his mind right and all those little things. Greg Johnson's a stud. I mean, one of the most talented people I've been around. He's very, 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 very tough. And then Ashton Beers, who's one of the most quiet people I've ever met, but on the field he's pretty loud, and he's done a great job at center this year and great job commanding. He puts me in check in the run IDs, and I'll point somebody. He'll be like, "No, Drake, we're going here." And I'll be like, "All right, I'm listening to you, brother."
Yeah.
But
Hey,
no,
I love that.
he's really smart. But he's done a great job. And then Tony Nelson's really developed, and I think he's done a great job. And then he'll have a great opportunity in the bowl game to go play another good game. And then the right tackle spot next year, we have a young guy named DJ Ship who's really, really talented. Reminds me of Nathan as a freshman. So we'll see what he can do, and then ultimately the portal. You maybe have to go get one or two guys, but you never know. So
yeah.
Talk a little bit about
Go ahead.
Sorry, talk a little bit about the
you're good. I love
relationship
it.
between the O-line and the quarterback. I know when I played for Tanner as quarterback, we were tight. Tanner shared a story about how at the bowl game, his final game as a Gopher, he's calling some protection and I'm calling it off because we're not in the right front.
It was the difference between sort and basically a 5-0 call. Is the same thing.
Yeah, it is.
He was just yelling at me to freaking block the guy. So
just block
I shut
the
my mouth and
technique,
listened
Quinn.
to him. So having that command over the O-line is huge. But another thing about offensive linemen and quarterbacks that people don't necessarily understand is offensive linemen really have to have a short memory, and so do quarterbacks. So talk about that a little bit. If an offensive lineman is he gave up a sack or a TFL or had a bad play, we have to flush that and go on to the next one because we're out there every single play. So
100%.
talk about that as a quarterback as well. You make a bad play, you have a wrong read, you throw an interception. How do you, as a quarterback, have the confidence to flush that and to go on to the next play?
Yeah, I think, first of all, the relationship with your O-lineman's huge because, I mean, those are the guys that are protecting your blind side. I mean, the running back's relationship with them is just as big as well. But, I mean, obviously, my freshman year, Max took us to Free House, and I think that's always fun, getting around the guys on outside of football with the whole group, and then we carry that on this year. So I think that's a huge piece every Thursday, like getting away from getting your head outside of football and just hanging out with the boys. And then the off season, doing little trips like your senior year, like how y'all went down to Dallas, I believe. I did the same thing with Greg and them, like allowed them to go down there and do that. And, just always be there for them, and anything they need, I'm always there for them, and I think the O-line room's obviously one of my closest friends. They're goofy, just always messing around. And then when it's time to get serious, it's very serious. And then going on to football, I think flushing it and really, really taking that approach of one play at a time, and whatever's going to happen is going to happen, and not allowing the circumstance to ultimately dictate your behavior, because each play has its own entity, and that's something Max taught me is you can't focus too much on the result as much as how easy it is. And it can be challenging. Like this year, Iowa was one of the toughest games. Really, you get down early really bad, and you're really just attempting to battle it out and put your best foot forward. Yeah, throwing a pick. Yeah, tough place to play. But throwing a pick is obviously something you never want to do as a quarterback, but it happens. You throw a bad ball, you make a misread, tip balls, whatever happens. There's so many people on the field where things can just happen sometimes. But I think especially when you have an OC, like when Harbaugh allows me to just keep shooting, keep firing, keep throwing the ball down the field, that gives me the confidence where it's like, you just got to trust your playmakers, trust your O-line, and then whatever happens is going to happen. But I feel like I did a really good job, not allowing drives. Like at the beginning of the year, like Cal, I got really frustrated, and I talked to Keegan after because I felt like I was bad on the sideline during the game. Getting frustrated after drives, like getting mad at myself or getting mad at other situations that are sometimes out of my control, and really just navigating. What can I do at the line of scrimmage, or what can I do better to maximize every single play? Because every play is so important in football. So really just taking that approach of maximizing every play.
Yeah, man, that's so good. That's so much wisdom you just dropped, and just vulnerability too, which is great.
Yeah,
I want to ask you two questions before I turn it
yeah.
back over to Quinn. Give us your favorite moment. You finished your first year as a starting quarterback in the Big Ten, right? Had a phenomenal season. What's your favorite moment? And then secondly, you can go into it. I like to start. I like to start with the completions. What was the toughest defense and why that you had to face this year? Whether it's scheme,
Um,
personnel.
I would say the coolest moment. I mean, obviously it was the worst game of the year for sure. I didn't play my best either, but the Michigan State finale was sick. Just a minute
Dude,
52
let me cut you off quick. The ball you threw on third down to
to Mechie.
Lemecki,
Yeah,
oh my goodness.
yeah. I bobbled the
That was
snap too.
filthy.
Yeah, that was a
That
tight
was
window.
insane, bro. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that whole game because I was just coming off Iowa, which was, I think I'd kind of twisted my brain a little bit of, not putting the ball in harm's way, and not I didn't necessarily play my game the whole 4 quarters, which I obviously regretted after the game. I was a little too cautious, not playing my football where it's, trusting myself, trusting my abilities, trusting my playmakers, and putting the ball in tight windows. And then when you go to the minute 52 drive, I'm throwing balls that I hadn't thrown all game, where it's like trusting me, trusting my O-line, trusting the wideouts. And I think that was the whole offensive mindset, that last minute 52, which is like you have to have it right there. You know what I mean? And when you have to have it, sometimes when you haven't played your best, your mindset can tweak a little bit where it's like, all right, boys, this is the last drive no matter what. So we got to go. You got to throw some balls that you maybe not have thrown, trust people a little more than you ever trust them. Do some things a little more, which is hard to say sometimes, but because the ball is so important, and sometimes you can't make those throws, as you know, Tanner. Like it's tough to want to
Right.
really rip it in there sometimes in those tight windows. But I think that's what the situation called for. And then, I mean, defense played a great game. So that was one of those games we obviously didn't play our best, but it was super fun. And then I think the best defense overall, I'd say, I mean, Ohio State was obviously nuts with the talent. I mean, they had guys all over the field that were just unreal. But I think Iowa, honestly, I feel like when I got into the game, it felt like a different level of what I'd seen on film. With their D line was so big and stout and so physical. They never MA'd, like they never messed up. And the way they were able to pass off zone coverages, like they were playing 4 clam, and they did it was the wildest thing I've ever seen on film. It was like 3rd and 3, and they completely passed off every route, and it
Jeez.
was in clam, and I had never seen it before. Um, how they were matching zones, it was honestly like it just felt like everything was covered. Like, and I hadn't been in a
Yeah.
situation where it felt like everything was really covered. Where I felt like if we won that game, I would have had to been so on point. Where it's like
Yeah.
I didn't really mess up, and obviously I wasn't on point, and they exposed me for that. And I think I reflected on the game, when you play a defense like that, you have to be so precise. And Coach Fleck had told me all week, and I didn't really think about it till after. He's telling me, like, you have to be super precise playing Iowa. Like every single play has to be
Yeah.
super precise. Don't force it.
Yeah.
Take what they give you. And I think that's what I'll take into next year playing that team, is they're so precise, and
Right.
they'll expose you so quick if you're not precise. And we obviously weren't
Mm.
precise, and they exposed us so fast. And we just have to take the coaching. I mean, I feel like the players didn't prepare our best that game, and that's what it showed. Was, we were MAing, messing up scheme, and that's out of, the coach's hands when players start doing that. So I think ultimately it was a big part on me. So I think that'll be a good learning point for me going into, the bowl game in the next year.
Yeah, it's awesome. I love it. Yeah, Phil Parker. Phil Parker he's
He's
one of them
nasty.
ones. He's a
I didn't
phenomenal coach.
I didn't realize, on the pick six I threw, I literally felt the corner run with him, and then pushed my eyes outside and he just fell
Dude,
off. I was like,
there
oh my God.
there was a clip of Oregon earlier in the season. They ran just straight up 3x1 detached 4 verts. They ran a far hash seam because it was cover 3, and then they ran a go on the outside. The corner was overlapping, which the corner's job in cover 3 is to stay in between, a divider technique, overlap technique, stay in between the 2 outside verticals. And Dante Moore, he had a tight hitch, they were on like the 30, goes to drive the seam in the corner, overlaps it, picked it off in the end zone. It was insane. I don't know
Yeah,
the last time I'd seen a seam ball picked off by the dividing corner, but they just, like you said it, bro, like they're going to be exactly where they're supposed to be in every zone and pass everything
100%.
off. And that's a testament to them as players, but also personnel. And,
Yeah, they're very good.
It's great. Quinn, what do you got for us?
Yeah. So the last question we got for you, Drake. What are some things that keep you grounded as a quarterback as the spotlight continues to grow? You know what I mean? Like, had a great first outing, first season. You got a big bowl game coming up, but now everybody knows you're coming back for the 2026 season. High expectations, spotlight's growing. What keeps you grounded through things like that?
Yeah, I think obviously trusting God and trusting my family is the number one thing. Continuing to rely on them and always know it's bigger than you. But I think one of the best things that I do is I'm very calm. I feel like I don't overwhelm myself. I don't make the moment too big. Um, like I feel like I got really good at, like, the only game I was nervous was Cal because it's my first road game. Like at Ohio State, I was just free. I think one of the best things about myself and that I bring to the offense is how free I am and how free spirited and how just go with the flow, how calm I am. And I think ultimately will help the coaches, help the offense, help the team with just, I think when your leader's just free and go with the flow, but ultimately, I work my butt off and I'm always in the facility. There's the respect piece, but also like the calmness that I feel like I bring to the team and the offense that I think will continue to grow. And then with the experience that I've gained and playing 12 games this year, I think that'll only continue to help me, be more relaxed, be calm, trust myself, trust my teammates, trust my playmakers, and put our team in the best position possible.
I love it. Play free. That's so huge. Quinn, you want to
Yeah.
talk about the honor roll? Drake, this is your first time on, but we're officially telling you that you're going to be a reoccurring guest on the HM Pod. So,
Oh,
in
it's
case you
sick.
didn't know that, no,
That's awesome.
we'll have you out to our setup in person too.
But yeah,
Yeah,
that'll be
because we're
sweet.
huge Drake Lindsey fans over on this podcast.
Man,
But
I'm
Quinn, tell them what
I'm a
the
huge
honor
fan of
roll is.
y'all's.
Yeah, huge fan with the boys here. So we've got our segment, the honor roll. I think it's one of my favorite things of what we do. So Quinn, tell it what it is, and then we'll have Drake go last. Okay, Quinn, you can kick it off. I'll go second, and then we'll have Drake close it out.
So the honor roll, it's a little spin on our name, honorable mentions. But every week we're going to come with something that we love. This could be anything. It could be, a person that you love playing with. It could be a guy in the NFL you love watching. It could be, just a whole, thing that you love, whether that's, week 12 of college football championship week or something stupid like a caribou coffee. You know what I mean? It could be
Yeah.
anything. So
Okay.
your honor roll,
On
your
field,
shout out of
off
the
field,
week.
locker room.
Yeah. Could be anything. So
All right.
it's your shout out of the week. I'll go first. We'll have Tanner go second. We'll have you wrap it up. So we'll give you some time to think.
All right.
My honor roll this week is the gritty grinder in the locker room. Not the guy who's necessarily bells and whistles, born with all this talent. I love the guy who's there first, leaves last, is always grinding, whether that's in the weight room, in the film room, in the training room, getting his body right, just so that he can be good enough to perform. Kind of under the same realm of an honorable mention player. Those guys grind just to be noticed. So that's my honor roll.
I love it. That's a great honor roll. In typical Tanner fashion, I'm going to have two, just because I said so. The first honor roll is I'm going to pick the one and only bowl games. Now, bowl games aren't the same as they used to be, right?
Yeah.
But I am a fan that I get to watch college football tonight, and I get to watch Missouri State in the Xbox Bowl, led by Jacob Clark, go and ball out. I love me some football, so I'm all in on bowl games. My second honor roll moment is going to be the FCS playoffs because I think it's done really well, and I think we might see that from a landscape look, turn into what the college football playoff could be. But there's a lot of great football in the FCS, especially in the Dakotas. And I love FCS playoffs because I love football and I love watching football. So bowl games and FCS playoffs. With that being said, I can't wait to watch December 26th, Drake Lindsey and the Minnesota Gophers in the Guaranteed Rate Bowl. You know, when we played in the Guaranteed Rate Bowl, Drake, it rained inside of a dome. If you didn't know that, I'm sure Coach Flex told you that story.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But Drake, what is your honor roll this week? And then we'll close out.
All right. Well, this guy, you know, I was thinking about him. I saw him on TV the other night, but this guy was there when I was a freshman for the first spring. He was one of the coolest dudes I ever met for the short time I got to, you know, get to know him. He's playing at a really, really high level. I saw a clip of him a couple months ago in the SEC down in Nashville, Tennessee. Cade McConnell.
Yeah.
Saw him at the Heisman ceremony. Saw the hair slicked back. So I haven't talked to him in a little bit, but I was thinking about him. I see him on TV, and I was like, dude, this dude's balling. I wish I got to play with him. Obviously, absolute dog. He's playing at a high level, so it's really cool to see him shine and get to see him. You know, 10-2 in the SEC is pretty hard to do, so that's awesome to watch.
Yeah. That'll be clipped.
That's a quarterback who loves his O-line.
Shout out
right
Cade
there.
McConnell.
Yeah,
Cade McConnell,
that's a guy
baby.
that loves the guys up front. Drake, dude, listen, again, thank you so much for coming on, man. You are now a recurring guest, and we can't wait to have you on, you out in person to our setup. But, man, again, like we said at the HM Pod here, the honorable mentions, we are Drake Lindsey guys through and through. We're Gopher guys, but we love Drake Lindsey, and we love seeing number 5, and can't wait to have you back next year. And excited, man. Thanks for being on the podcast.
Appreciate you guys.
Good luck. Merry Christmas, and good luck in the bowl game, brother.
Yeah, Merry Christmas to y'all. I appreciate y'all.
Yeah,
appreciate you, Drake.
Man. Thank you.